Hello, it's Cryptolyze. I hope you are well this Friday, October 2023. It is with pleasure that we meet today to talk about BTC, to talk about crypto, to talk about macro, because there is still a lot going on, and in particular the really impressive fall that we had on the SP 500 yesterday, and the bullish acceleration that we had yesterday at the BTC level really actually marks something that is shifting, and we are going to look at all of that together now. As a reminder, you always have the possibility of having free access to the educational course, which is a 60-hour training course worth €400, which allows you to learn blockchain, crypto, investment, technical analysis, trading, everything to become profitable. Through 130 videos, 400 pages of guides, quizzes to find out where you are in your progress, and all for free. To have access to this lifelong training, simply use the platform of one of our partners. Everything is explained in the comments and descriptions. We're just going to come back first of all to Jerome Powell's speech. So, Jerome Powell's speech, that's it. He validated something which is important, which is the fact that we are not going to increase rates, and we are going to stay at this rate for a certain time until whatever is necessary, until the restrictive part is done. So this is something that I had already announced to you in September. I told you that he could not announce it for the moment, but that's it. He also announced it for several reasons, because we are in the process of stalling on the SP 500, because there is a very strong bond crisis. We will deal with this whole subject on Saturday. Don't worry. It's going to be a video which will be intense, which will be very strong, which will validate a certain number of points about the American macroeconomy, and which will show you how BTC can fare in relation to that. Nevertheless, what is important to see is that yes, that's it. It's recorded, we're sure. This plateau zone, which is very important, and this is also seen because we have the rates which are in the process of bursting. We'll look at that a little later in the video. We are moving forward in the news with crypto once again within the discussions of the Senate, and generally of the American regime, where it is, a priori, everything which is going to be an international crypto mixer will be considered as being diverted, means to be able to finance terrorism, to be able to finance the mafias, to be able to finance... Finally, there will be 30,000 excuses. But overall, everything is considered to be a means of circumventing the law. So we are in a form of validation of the end of anonymity, with the European regulations which have arrived, and which are already very painful, and the US regulations which are going to arrive and which risk being very painful too. Well, we still have some good news, because in this case, Grayscale is in the process of filing its ETS pot with the SEC, which is classic, being the SEC decided not to appeal, so Grayscale can finally file. It requires transforming GBTC into an ETF, which is positive. I think it will be validated at the same time as the others. At Ripple's level, big news on the other hand, we have a halt to the SEC's proceedings against Ripple, and mainly against 2 of its managers and 2 of its employees, and therefore this in fact entrusts the series of good news at the level of Ripple, and that this is very good news for all cryptos, because it can serve as jurisprudence. Is this enough? No, I don't think so, but in any case we are moving in the right direction, especially since we are supposed to have American regulations which should arrive soon. Next to it, we have Binance, which is taking a first step in the European zone, and in particular in the French zone, where we have a new partner for the euros. So tell me if you succeeded in the comments, because I personally can withdraw the euros, but on the other hand, if I have USDT, I cannot transform them into euros, and a priori, we will have to wait a few more days to be able to do it. Personally, I don't have much more on the platform, so I couldn't test it for you to tell me if it works or not in the comments or on Twitter. Then we have the SP 500, and there we attack the technical list. Big day SP 500 yesterday, a really big drop, really low close. What's interesting is that we have this retest really well here, and I think that the weekly closing is going to be really important too. Because if we manage to maintain this level here, or be even a little bit further below, that implies that we are in the process of swallowing the candle of the previous week, and we validate this bearish continuity. And at the same time, which is logical given what is happening on bonds and generally the bond market versus the SP 500, I will really come back to this tomorrow. I invite you to watch the video. It will be really very interesting to understand the impact that it will have on the American economy and necessarily at the level of BTC. Although BTC manages to hold, don't worry, we will look at it in a few moments. US oil, we are closing above the retest, exactly what we did not want for US inflation, so which adds even more fuel to the fire, if we can use this term, at the level of the S&P 500, in which we will have the complexity of keeping inflation rising, and what scares me the most is always the TTL, which really continues this descent into hell. It doesn't stop, and I think we will soon head here towards the lowest of the 80. And there, It will really be the alarm signal. We come back to it tomorrow. And when we look at yesterday, we see that's why I told you that the fact that we have reached a plateau at the level of the Fed clearly shows this upward acceleration that we have here, which is the differential between the 10 years and the 2 years, therefore, which is this inverted curve that we have been talking about for a very long time now, for those who follow the chain, and which is heading towards zero little by little because we have a clear surge in the 10 years, which is accelerating, and a maintenance of 2 years, so which means that we really have a curve which is accelerating, and that too is really symptomatic of this notion of recession which is going to arrive. Same, if you want to know more, tomorrow, 13:30. We move on to BTC. BTC, which is well in the green, which is really well in the green. I give you our friend SP 500. I give us our BTC. We are well within a limit, a total inversion of the polarity between the two. We are really in something that is really very strong. That is to say that the S&P 500 is sinking, the Nasdaq is holding its ground, or even sinking. The BTC continues to rise. Bitcoin is outperforming all US indices, and that is very positive. And at the same time, which makes sense for several reasons. As I have already explained to you for some time, we are in areas which are very strong, in which we are above the support following the breakdown of the accumulation which is located here. We are waiting for endogenous elements specific to crypto. We have good crypto news that is in progress to arrive, and next to it we have a reduction in structured products in which BTC no longer appears in agreement. There are no longer structured products in which we have an exposure to excess risk for funds. So that means that we do not have lines to be sold quite simply for protection. Those who are on BTC currently are on BTC point. They are not in a structured product in which they do not know that they have crypto, or in any case not really aware of the impact that it can have. So we are really in this process where it is rather positive. So yes, but when we look closer and we see that we were in a range zone with a strengthening of liquidity here, I had already explained to you that we were going to seek to show higher liquidity. We went to make him director on Wednesday on air, and I told you straight away that potentially we could go higher up to 29,500. We see that we went for 29,415. We start with a very nice candle followed by, well, 2 hours of candles rather, to get all this level of liquidity, which is at the same time logical when we look at the cash that has been recovered. We can clearly see that following this acceleration we had a strengthening of liquidity. That's what I told you about. Ooh, be careful, we can continue to accelerate upwards before accelerating downwards. Why the increase? Because we recovered all this liquidity pulse, which was really close, in which we had a real increase in order flow. We can clearly see that we had this upward acceleration in which we liquidated part of open interest. And we see that we were in a phase of restructuring the open interest here, and we can clearly see that we have broken down a part of the open interest here. So we have broken down apart levers, although there is an egalitarian strengthening of the levers which is being done. So this implies that we are in the process of reloading, particularly in the long run. The top traders are in the process of positioning themselves short. Okay, that's it, we have a small position taken. Well, which all in all is relatively light. Okay, we had a little acceleration. But what is important to see is that really, since August 8th, we can clearly see that in terms of the founding rate, in terms of top trader positions, we are really in a form of ranging. Clearly, we do not have any position. We don't have a side that is taken. And so that reminds us. That's why we have to take a little step back. Here. That we're good. We're going remove Ichimoku. And we will come back to Ichimoku afterwards. In a form of ranging. Alright? We are in a form of ranging. And mainly since we made this break here. If we go through the day, it's clear since we had August 18 that day, we're in a ranging phase in which, yes, we have a small acceleration here in this part. But overall, we're still in this big phase here of uncertainty, and we remain in this phase of uncertainty, and there is no real movement that tells us that we are leaving this phase of uncertainty. We have liquidity movements which are rather classic in a range phase to be able to move within the range. So here we are slowly moving towards the 30,000 and looking for the liquidity that is there, which we have already been talking about for some time. The question is, are we going to get there knowing that we already had this strand? That's the big question. Personally, I admit that it's not something I'm going to play. For me, we are in a moment of salt, and I think that we will get all this liquidity quite quickly up to potentially 26,000. And there it can go very, very quickly because it will be accentuated very strongly by short levers, and we will do the long liquidation. I think this could be quick. What is also important to see is that we have dominance which is accelerating. So here we are really in a part where it is something that is pushed by BTC. It is a movement that is specific to BTC. So this form of detachment from the SPF 500 and the macroeconomy is really supported by BTC, and it is rather positive. It means that BTC really has this desire and this strength to be resilient in relation to the general macro, and something that we doubted for some time already. Have started to really regain confidence since we had over the last 6 months overall a form of resilience which was being formed since May, where we saw that it was something which was rather positive, and there it is really being acted upon. Currently, this does not mean that if we ever have a real drop at the level of the SPF 500 that the BTC does not drop. But in this case, it is certain that we will not necessarily go as low as the SPF 500, and that it's rather positive regardless. The quality and strength of the recession that we will have in the US, if you want to know more, 1330 Saturday. So, the elements that I wanted to give you in addition is that we have a kingfisher in which we can clearly see that we have a perpetual which is pushing this movement. So for me, that confirms a little bit the movement that I have in mind, what I really think I see coming. It will be a bearish acceleration following this increase in liquidity. Will it end there? Are we going to continue to push a little more to get the 30,000 or even a little higher and then break? At that point, I will look for an entry, and what will be important for me at the entry level, we will just take the right graph. It will be here, these liquidity levels which are pending. So there, if I ever have a return in 30,300, 30,400, I will look for a distribution to tell myself, okay, at that point, I will wait until I have a distribution for breakback. Or even, why not? Wait a little bit higher. Wait for confirmation at the level here of this resistance to make a deviation. Therefore, recovery of liquidity, bearish breakout, retest, and there, on this retest, I could have a nice entry to tell me that I'm going to have a bearish continuity. Clearly, the acceleration that has been driven by here, the ETF is positive, okay? Really, in fact, this fake news from the ETF is really positive because suddenly it has revitalized prices. My only concern is that it is carried by perpetual. If it is carried by perpetual, we will have to have endogenous news to tell ourselves that we are breaking here the very strong levels and that we are managing to blow these tops. As long as we don't have that, in this case for me, we are just in a form of retest to go and retest the lower part of the range and then potentially start to rise again. We are in a zone of lethargy. So what is rather positive on this, it will really be on Ishimoku. We will see that we still have a lot of things because we are in the process of closing the weekly above the Kumo with a break. On the other hand, the ALS, the lagging span, is very blocked here, so I think it will be relatively complicated to pass. But in any case, we still have a positive sign. For me, if we were on a lagging span that was in that zone, we would be rather positive, okay? Because it's true that the lagging span would have the strength to reach the top of the Kumo. We are above Kumo, we are above Kijun and Tenkan. So for me, we are in a bullish acceleration with a signal that could be positive from the moment we have the ALS which manages to pass, okay? So there, it is really the problem of the lagging span which is being played out, and that is why I am telling you that Ichimoku confirms the fact that it risks being complicated to continue to climb so high and we risk being stuck quite quickly on precisely this weekly analysis, although we have an RSI which is in the process of validating upwards. So that's why we are still on a weekly closing, so it's going to be tonight. If this evening we close at these levels or even a little above, that means that we are indeed in the process of emerging from the compression at the momentum level, and therefore we will be able to see my bullish volume to go look potentially a little higher, as we said, the 30,000, 30,500, 31,000, to go top low in the range and then sink lower. I hope you liked this video. If so, don't forget to leave me a like and a comment. It supports the channel. It always makes me very happy, especially since I respond to everyone that comments. I read you. It really makes me happy to write to you each time. And then we meet at 13:30 to talk about H-bar, Hedera's crypto. It's at 13:30.